Shabbat Shalom.
And congratulations to the new family. Yeah. Hey. After the death of the firstborn, Pharaoh appeared to have changed his mind and come to his senses and let Israel go. Egypt was in ruins. The people were adamant about letting Israel go. They've had enough. And said that they couldn't take much more. His contrition, however, was short-lived. And his wallet was speaking, I think. And Pharaoh said once again, reconsidered and said, "What have we done letting our slaves go?" He gathered 600 of his best chariots, plus more along with their commanders, and headed out to round up the runaway slaves. And little did I realize, they'd not be returning home. In Scripture, when something is repeated, it is for emphasis. In this portion, the hardening of Pharaoh's heart is mentioned 3 times. The Lord told Moses to raise his staff over the sea. It parted, and Israel passed through the waters on dry ground. The Egyptians pursued into the sea. Adonai looked out on the army through the column of fire, and he threw them into a panic. He caused the chariot wheels to come off, and too late they exclaimed, "The Lord is fighting for Israel." So that when they said the Lord is fighting, they were acknowledging that their gods have had it. You know, they've been defeated. The Lord is fighting for Israel against the Egyptians. Let's get away from here. Do you have a slide? No? Okay. That's all right. On the internet, I found a slide, and what it shows is in the area where the crossing was, they found chariot wheels covered with coral. Had been there a long time. And so they said they found, human bones, horse bones. So kind of like, it's right there. It says, by dawn the sea had come to its former state, and Israel saw the bodies of the Egyptians washed up on the shore. Where the crossing was, it was in essence a land bridge, because it came up like this, and it was not as deep on either side. It went down to like 5,000 or 6,000 feet. But Solomon, about 400 years after the crossing, he erected 2 pillars. Well, they found the pillars. And they said that the inscriptions on the pillars, there was one on the Egyptian side and one on the Arabian side. And they found the words Adonai, Pharaoh, Moses, death, and water. The Saudis removed their pillar, but the Egyptians left theirs. From the Song of Moses, we see several passages that have been adapted for songs. I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously, the horse and rider thrown into the sea. And I'm probably a lot of you have heard that before. In the Haftorah, we see that Israel had turned away from following the Lord. He sold him into the hands of Jabin, the Canaanite king, and Sisera, his commander. After 22 years of oppression, the cries of Israel came to God's ears, and he arranged for the Canaanite army's defeat, sending Deborah the prophetess and judge. She called for Barak and told him to gather 10,000 men, and God would arrange for Sisera to meet him at the Kishon River. Here the Lord would hand Sisera over to Barak. So God in behind the scenes was bringing everything together to the point where Israel would be victorious. Barak, however, had a better idea and would only go if Deborah accompanied him into battle. What? God was giving him a battle plan, and it wasn't good enough? Yes, God would give Israel the victory, but Barak would not get the credit for the win. That would go to a woman, namely Yael. The battle ensued, the Canaanite army was decimated, and Sisera fled for his life on foot. Sisera ran to the family of Heber because they were allies. Bad move on his part, and he unknowingly ran to his own death when he asked Yael to hide him. He took refuge in the tent. She gave him milk and laid down exhausted and never woke up. And the song of Deborah is revealed that the Lord sent an earthquake and torrential rains, miring the chariots in place, making them like sitting ducks for Barak's army. The New Covenant reading is the account of Yeshua walking on the water. After feeding the 5,000, Yeshua sent the disciples ahead of him to the other side of the lake, while he sent the crowds away. He went into the hills to pray, and night fell. By this time, the disciples were several miles from shore, and a storm came up. He could have left them to fend for themselves, but he walked out to them in the middle of the storm. Thinking he was a ghost, they cried out in fear. But I got to give them credit. Nobody had ever walked on water before. So they were thinking he was a ghost, and they cried out in fear. Peter alone had the courage to go to Yeshua. The rest played it safe and stayed in the boat. As Peter took his eyes off Yeshua and looked at the winds and looked at the tumult, he began to sink, but Yeshua reached out and saved him. As they reached the boat, the wind ceased, and the disciples confessed, "You are God's Son." Yeshua not only calmed the sea, but their fears as well. Which would we be, the water walkers or the play it safers? At the word of the Lord, the walls of water provided safety for Israel, but death for the Egyptians. At the word of the Lord, the rain caused the chariots to be mired in the mud, and the Canaanites were defeated. At the word of the Lord, the storm was quieted. Sink or swim, Yeshua is still Messiah. God shows his control over wind, rain, and wave to accomplish his plans. Can we trust him with our futures here and forever? Shabbat Shalom.